So, optical illusions are something that is really fun to play with. I'm not going to go into a ton of depth about some of them just because some of you are going to maybe take up the extra credit demonstrations or lessons, and you could potentially pick one of the optical illusions to do some of your stuff about, some of your delivery about. So, we'll look at them because they're fun, and some of them you do need to know for the test. So, all right, visual capture. This refers to the tendency for us to allow visual images to dominate our perception, meaning that we believe our eyes first. Our eyes are our first frame of reference for when we believe stuff. And so, like when you go to the movies, when you're sitting in a movie theater, you perceive the sound as coming from the actor's mouths, right? When you're watching on screen, you actually are staring at the actors and you think that they are talking from their mouths. But you also subconsciously know that the picture is being projected on the screen, but the speakers are all on the sides of your head, and that's where the sound is actually coming from. But it really doesn't matter because even though you know the sound is coming from the sides of your head, or in speakers around the theater, you perceive it coming from the person's actual mouth. Ventriloquists are another good example of it. Can't show it here, but I'm sure you guys have seen ventriloquists. There was a little girl on America's Got Talent. Some kids know like Jeff Dunham. Anybody that's a ventriloquist, when you watch them, like, I know the puppet's not speaking. I know it's just a puppet. But when I'm watching a ventriloquist perform, when it's the puppet's turn to talk, I'm staring at the puppet. I'm not staring at the person that is making those noises or those vocalizations. I'm watching the puppet because in my brain, that's why ventriloquism is cool, because it looks like it's coming out of the puppet. It looks like the puppet is actually talking, and that's what makes me super interested in it. So that's what visual capture is. The McGurk Effect. So this one I'm going to post a video clip to. Because it's something I do want you to see, and it's awesome. I love the McGurk Effect because it's so just like mind-twisting. So with this, it's once again how we believe our visual field more than anything else that our brain is telling us to maybe listen to in this case. So what the McGurk Effect does is it describes the visual perception of a sound. So what they do is they have somebody on camera making movements, like they're talking, right? But it's going to be like maybe they're saying the word fa, 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 fa. But what they do is they overlay it with the sound of that person saying ba, 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 ba. So your eyes are seeing fa and your ears are hearing ba. So the question is, which one do you believe? Well, your eyes. You definitely believe your eyes, or maybe you make up a whole new sound that you think you see, you hear. It's super, super cool because while you're watching it, you'll think one thing, but then all you have to do is mid that person's stream of syllables, close your eyes, and all of a sudden the sound will change and become more clear, and you'll know actually what's being said because your eyes won't be competing with your ears for what they're supposed to be hearing. So the McGurk Effect is super cool, and please watch the video that I post because it's awesome. So the McGurk Effect is not the McGurk Effect, the Stroop Effect is another really cool one. It is one that was always a big crowd pleaser when we have class. So it's the idea that you read the font color and not the word. And how your brain gets really confused. So you could do, so on this picture that I have, instead of saying yellow, you'd say green because that's the color of the font. So you'd have to say green, red, blue, yellow, blue, black. And it's really, really hard compared to if you just got to read it, it'd be yellow, blue, orange, black, red, green, purple, yellow, red, orange, green, blue. I can do that really easy because my brain is programmed to read stuff first versus when I'm trying to fight the urge to read the word while also just trying to say the color. Because my brain gets confused on what I'm trying to do because I have a natural impulse to read. it goes way slower versus if you had a person, like if this was in, let's say, Arabic. I have no idea how to read Arabic at all. If it was written in Arabic, I would have no problem saying the font colors because my brain can't comprehend the ability to read those words. So I wouldn't even try. So it's super interesting to do. So you can actually go and click on, let's see if I can get to this. Maybe. There we go. Maybe my internet's not going to work. Or they took it down. There we go. So I'll post this website too, and it's super fun to go test out the Stroop Effect. So the first time on this one, you just go through and you'd hit the start button and then go red, yellow, blue, green, black, and you'd go through them as quickly as you could and then hit finish. And it'd tell you how much time had lapsed in seconds, right? Which apparently was a lot of seconds. So if you hit start, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, you read through all of them, it stops you. Okay, and then you go down here and you do the same with this one, except now the colors, like this top one, the colors match the words. This one, they don't. You just have to read the colors, and you'd hit the start and finish, and you'd see that it takes people sometimes up to 50% longer to do this bottom version than the top because of the conflicting pieces of your brain trying to go back and forth, which I always think is super cool. Okay. And then optical illusions just in general are fun to look at, right? And it's because our brain doesn't know how to perceive them, and we are using other cues that we have that we always understand as normal or an expectation of how the world works, and it messes with us. So you have this one where actually the horizontal lines are all parallel and all straight, but they appear to be bent in different ways, whether they get skinnier or they get fatter. When you try to count the black dots, right, you kind of, if you look directly at them, they disappear, but then when you move your eyes, they reappear. There's no black dots, but that's how your brain interprets it. This one, actually, all the lines are straight, but it looks like it's wobbled and raised in areas when it's actually not. Same thing here. It looks like it's built up in the center as like almost like it's, you're looking down the top of a pyramid, it's bulging. All the lines are straight. MC Escher always has a lot of fun ones too, where you can't understand, like, oh yeah, they're a flat surface down here. Oh, now these guys are hanging over the balcony. Wait, how does it flip? Just really confusing stuff. These are the wave ones. They're really fun. If you kind of like look across, if you scan across, it'll start to kind of wave at you. Or even if you just stare at the middle, the sides kind of look like they're waving. Another really fun one, it looks like the wheels spin, but there's absolutely no movement because it's just a picture. It's not like a GIF or a video or anything. And this one, I'll leave it up for a sec. If you just keep staring at the black dot in the center for a really long time, you can blink and stuff, but just keep staring at the black dot in the center, and eventually that gray haze will completely go away. Like mine is pretty much gone. From just staring at it, it just looks like a pretty crisp black dot, but if I were to look away, blink a little bit and come back, the gray haze would be back, but it would go away pretty quickly. It's just because your eye acclimates. Another roller one, when there's absolutely no movement. Looking at this, is it a possible shape to make if I gave you guys little tiles? No, it's impossible. You couldn't do it. I always have kids argue. There's always one that's like, I could do it. Actually, you couldn't. It's impossible to do, but your brain almost wants to think it is because I kind of understand it, and then I don't. This one you have to look like a weirdo. If you look at the dot in the center and you go forward to the computer and back and forward and back, the rings will look like they're turning separate ways. Another roller one. I think the roller ones are my favorites. They're just so weird. And then this one, which we're going to talk about, stroboscopic motion. All right, and then here we have the phi phenomenon. So, illusion of movement, when you have two or more things that blink on and off in an order. So, if you look at this one at the top here, If you look at the section in the middle, it looks like there's a yellow light that bops around it right in order, but if you actually try to follow the yellow light, it's gone. There isn't one. Yellow is created due to an after image, right? Blue and yellow. And there is no movement. Even if you're trying to follow the dot, it almost looks like something's moving around. But it's just because things are sequencing. Same with this bottom row here with the lights twinkling. It looks like they're twinkling in an order, but they're not. It's just one turning off and another turning on in a certain order. So this is how all of like the neon signs work. If you see like an arrow that says this way to this attraction, the sign does not move, or any of them where like the lights go around in a circle real quick. That's not there. We just perceive it because things are turning on and off in a rapid succession, and our brain perceives it as movement. So, 5 phenomenon, super, super fun. This one, if you stare at the dot, it looks like a green light, but it's not there. And then we have stroboscopic motion, was what I mentioned before I had to switch PowerPoints, with this spider that looked like it was moving at you, but it wasn't. All it was they were flipping through pictures really, really fast, and it looked like we were doing something. So movies, old school movies especially, were like this when you used to have like the film strips and the one frame at a time. And if they just played it fast enough, it looked like a solid motion. You could do this too if you like had your camera, right? And you just held the button. Remember, like I know some cameras, if you hold the button down, it just takes rapid fire pictures. And if you were to scroll through them fast enough, it looks like a movie's playing. Or if you made flip books when you were a kid. So I like this one, which will not have sound on it, but should work. If I can get it to here. So this is an example of stroboscopic. They're just stationary pictures on a page, but when we play them in a really, really quick succession, it looks like there's movement going on, which is super cool. So we have already done visual. And I'll put those videos up for the McGurk Effect. This is another fun one to look at. The impossible figure, is she spinning clockwise or counterclockwise? And sometimes if you just close your eyes and then envision her moving the other way, she will. Some people can even get her to stop and then pivot. It's just because there's no explanation or no detail of depth or anything in this photo. So I think I found a video on explaining why this works, and I'll try to post it if I can find it. We also have the inability to sometimes gather sizes on this. So point A and point B in our brain, they'd be the same size because that's how this works. Like in a real world, if this wall was receding, this would, appear in our visual field to be smaller than this one, but it would not when we have to draw it out, right? So if you took your fingers and measured this thing to this screen, point B is way smaller than point A. But in our brains, we just assume like at some level, yeah, they're the same size because in the real world, that's how it would work. So we'll talk about that more when we get to like relationship cues, perceptual cues. The Ponzo illusion is what we call this one. Track A and track B over here. It looks like A is vastly larger than B, but they're actually exactly the same size. But based on the surroundings and our understandings of how linear perspective works, we assume A is larger because it takes up the whole track and B only takes up a portion. The dogs are all the same size in the middle, but we know how receding hallways work. And if that dog is taking up the whole hallway at the back and this one's only taking up the beginning part, this one's super tiny, this one's huge. Monsters, same thing. Takes up the whole space of the hallway that's receding into the past. And then this guy, they're exactly the same size. Could explain why the moon illusion works, right? It's about background. When moon is high up in the sky, we have nothing to compare it to except blackness of the sky and maybe the stars. Versus when moons hang really, really low on the horizon, they look so much bigger. It's because we have houses and trees and all these other things more relative to compare it to, and it looks huge. But if you compared your thumb up to that versus when it's in the sky, it'd be the same size. So we have the Mulerlyer illusion, which are all these lines in the center are actually the same length, but they look different based on how we end the line. And we see it in walls too, right? So like we are easily fooled by this. We assume that this line would be the same length as this line because that's how walls work in our homes. It might look skewed, but we know logically they're the same length. People in Western cultures fall more prey to this than others. So super interesting to look at. And then the Zimbardo Ames room, which I will post about as well. So I think that's it for these illusions.